The topic we will be talking about today is Maya, the influence of Maya on our soul, and what can we do to reduce the impact. Let's close our eyes, relax, gather our focus, please. Breathe deeply, slowly. And let's spend some beautiful, sublime, spiritual time together as one, Sangat of the Divine Light family. Let us take our mind back to ancient India. In the time of Krishna, there was a great sage by the name of Narad. Narad was a saint who was very inquisitive and would ask beautiful questions to the saints. And one day he approached Krishna. Lord Krishna, he said, I am puzzled with the concept of Maya. What is Maya? And how does Maya influence a human being in such a powerful and profound way? Krishna hears the question. However, he keeps quiet. Time passed by. One morning, Krishna asks Narad to join him for a ride on his chariot. Dutifully, Narad obliged. Crossing many rivers and mountains, they came to a desert land. Krishna looks at Narad. My child, I am thirsty. While I take a rest, will you go and search for some water? Narad went in search for some water in the scorching desert heat. Narad walked and walked, and in a distance he sees a village. And as he approaches the village, he sees a well, and he observes a beautiful young lady drawing water from the well. Narad became mesmerized by her beauty. He forgot about Krishna. He forgot about the water. And in his infatuation, he follows her home. They reach the village. And it was not long before Narad approaches this young maiden's father and asks for her hand in marriage. the marriage rites were performed, and Narad and his new wife set up a beautiful home near a flowing river, and together they started a life. Time passed by. They were happy. Life was good. And soon they had a family. One night, it started to rain. Heavy and relentless. It rained so much that the river overflooded. So severe was the flooding that Narad's home, his wife, his children, all became the victims to the flood. Listening to the cries of these children, Narad in vain tried to save them, and as much as he tried, he could not. Lamenting at his loss of all that was dear to him, he fell onto the floor, crying loudly in agony. Suddenly, he feels a tap on his shoulder. With large volume of tears flowing from his eyes, he looks around, and in front of him, he sees Lord Krishna. Narad became bewildered. Just a few minutes ago, he could hear the cry of these children, the overflow of the river, death. And yet, there was no wife, there was no children, there was no home, just a barren desert. Krishna smiled. Narad, my child, where have you been? I have been waiting for 30 minutes. Where is my water? And what Narad, in his illusion, for many years, he married, he settled, he built a house, he had children, was in fact just a mere few minutes. Does that feel, is that something that we can connect to? We feel that our life is so long to the point that we have all forgotten our mortality. And yet, the divine scriptures say, you are only here for one night, my child, and no more. Such is the illusion of Maya, that what we perceive to be a whole life in the eyes of the divine are a mere few hours. Krishna replied, Narad, you once asked me, what is Maya and the consequences and the perceptions of Maya? Maya, my child, cannot be explained. It can only be experienced. So let us break this discourse into 4 sections. Let us evaluate Maya deeply on a spiritual level. Let us evaluate the soul. Let us evaluate how the soul falls into the entrapment of Maya, and how can the soul be rescued. So what is Maya? The scriptures of the Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji states, Tregun Maya Brahm ki kinhi, Koho kavan bhed tariye re, Kuman kher agha gakhri, Gur sabdi par utariye re. Question. God has created Maya of 3 qualities. And in this whirlpool of human desires, this Maya, tell me, my Lord, how can I cross this Bhavasagar? And the answer, my child, only through the word of the Shabd Guru, whether that be Jesus, Allah, Waheguru, whichever divine Shakti, power your faith lies in. For the Sikh, the Shabd Guru Waheguru and Ek Onkar. Only through that can we cross this world of Maya. And yet, this world that we live in is not Maya. This is the abode of the truth. E jag, sache hi hai kotari, sache ka vichvas. And in this, in the many forms, the divine exists. So what is Maya? Maya is an illusion. The three qualities of Maya are Rajguna, Tamguna, and the Sattvic. Passion, ignorance, and goodness. These gunas, the Rajguna and the Tamguna and the Satguna, they are Maya in various guises, in various dimensions. And they are also known as the gunas. Gunas meaning a rope. And through these three modes, these three gunas, we are all tied down to this world of ours, our own little universes. Raja, Tama, Satakala, Teri Shaya. Shaya meaning shadow. The Rajguna, the Tamguna, and the Satguna, the shadow of Maya. And the combination of Rajguna, Tamguna, and the Sattvic in their various permutations determine the individual personality's mind and intellect, habits, moods, emotions, words, actions, and reactions of a human being. Tregun Maya Moho Pasara Sab Varte Akari Turiya Gun Sat Sangat Paye Nadri Pare Otari. And these three qualities of Maya bind the soul to the body and the material world. Maya, an illusion, a master of a million faces, which pervades in all finite things and yet is not from the finite. Many times the finite world had been destroyed, yet the shades of Maya lurked throughout the ages. If the divine is like the light of a lantern, then Maya is likened to a dark storm, a dark shadow zone. Whereas the one divine is absolute, Maya is not absolute. And its influence is relative only to the power of the focus of the observer. What do I mean by that? You see something, and your focus goes completely on that item, whether that be a new dress, or whether that be a new house, a new car, or a new watch. And as your focus as an observer becomes strong, the influence, the desire becomes that much stronger. So Maya is not absolute. Maya's influence is only relative to the power of the focus of the observer, meaning our focus. And for those whose focus lies strong in the world, the attraction of Maya will be strong. And for those whose focus lies strong in the divine, the attraction of Maya will be greatly reduced, making one's spiritual journey that much easier. Once our focus becomes strong in any aspect of materialism, that will give rise to what is known as the Indriyas. Indriyas are the sense organs. For example, if one is infatuated, like in Narad's case, to a lady, then the Indriya of lust will kick in. These are all known as Vaishnamas, Tamas and Rajas. So therefore, the focus on a single materialistic point will give rise to certain Vaishnavas or desires And they will bring into the material existence, into our domain of the sense, the three fields of the gunas, whether that be Rajguna, Tamguna, and the Satguna. So what is Rajguna? The lowest. This where Maya is absolutely dense and conceals the truth. Lazy, lethargic, argumentative, I do not believe, unable to listen to anybody, self-opinionated. Here, Maya is dense. Maya actually conceals the truth. Rise above that into the energy field known as Tamguna. And this Tamguna is needed to raise our families, to succeed in business, to achieve, very important. They make our life, we go forward. However, when these Tamguna fall into the domain of mine, my wife, my money, my house, then they create projections and stories. And here, in this form, Maya becomes a perception. What is that perception? This is my home. This is my money. This is my friends. This is mine. This is mine. This is mine. That is a perception. And an individual who has fallen prey to Maya, in that perception, for that individual, that perception is the truth. In the Sattvic, the third highest stage, the energy of Maya becomes smooth, virtuous, acting in a divine way, acting in a holy way, acting in a charitable way, providing a certain spectrum of knowledge above the Rajguna and the Tamguna, giving rise to contentment. And certain spiritualists who have experienced even the smallest amount of spiritual experiences, they will fall trap into this Maya, completely trapped. This is the most subtlest and the most dangerous form of Maya, which entraps the spiritualist. And yet the underlying force in all three dimensions of Maya is ego. So, Guruji says, Rajguna, Tamguna, Satguna ke ye teri sab Maya. All three states of the Rajguna, the Tamguna, and the Sattvic, all are the stages of Maya. Different shades, different perceptions, different dimensions, different experiences, but all the shade of Maya. To rise above the Sattvic is when the real spiritual journey begins. So therefore, it is acknowledged by the saints that the projection of Maya through the three dimensions of Rajguna, Tamguna, and the Sattvic is experienced as an illusion, as dense, and as a perception. In Narad's case, it was the perception of a beautiful lady, meaning mesmerized by the beauty of that lady that went and created an illusion. To the finite mind or the Maya mind, the illusion will be seen as the whole truth. Let's look at ourselves. Let's reflect for a minute. You see your children, you see your homes, you see your accumulations, you see your achievements. For 1 minute, do we ever reflect? Do they really belong to us? No, because the Maya has seen this illusion to be the whole truth. Now, to the enlightened mind, Maya will be seen as a force made of many shades, many characteristics, many colors, divided in many perceived realities of our existence and in every plane of conscious interactions. In easy understanding, Maya is that force that hides from humanity its true essence, its purpose, and the one permanent divine truth. So what is the soul? In certain religious understandings, such as Sikhism, the soul is commonly referred to as the Atma. However, the soul and the Atma are they're very loosely connected. The Atma and the soul, very, very loosely connected. So the Atma is seen as part of Ishwar, Paramatma, or the divine, and is beyond the senses of the mind. Whereas the soul, people will try to connect with the soul, departed soul, but in the sphere of Atma, this does not happen because it is beyond the senses of the mind, and that is the difference. Atma has no form, no individuality, no subtle bodies, no distinguishing qualities. It is infinite, indestructible, eternal, supreme, self-existing, self-illuminating, self-knowing, beyond the senses of the mind. It can neither be objectified nor known by mind. That is drowning in the three dimensions. So any mind which is in the three dimensions of Rajgun, Tamgun, and the Sattvic will not identify the Atma. The Atma is identified by a very fair few people, and they are known as Brahmagyanis, or the Jivan Mukt. Those who have risen above the three modes of Maya, risen above this, gone into the Dasam Dwar, become a Brahmagyani, they are the ones who can recognize which Atma belongs to which person. So the Atma is also referred to as the ray of the Absolute, or the breath of life. Gurbani uses the analogy of the ray of a sun merging with the sun itself, also known as Kiran. Suraj, Kiran mile, Jal ka Jal hua Ram. And a drop of water merging into an ocean known as Bund. The soul is also known as the Jyot Swarup, the Jeev Atma, or the reflection of the light of the divine. Although impossible to describe, a soul can be depicted as that which is born from and is part of the boundless, infinite Shakti, meaning divine power, the invisible life force, all present, vibrating throughout eternity. Some spiritualists describe the soul as a vibration in every atom, manifested in all living creatures, and latent in other forms such as a rock. Guru Granth Sahib Ji describes the abode of the soul as Sukham Murat Naam Niranjana Kaya Ka Akar, housed in an invisible body called the Sukham Sri, the Sukham body. Within the physical body is the subtle image, the soul, or the Naam, the Shabd of the Niranjan. Bhagat Kabir Ji, a very famous sage, describes the soul as limitless, without a mother or father, not human and not God, not a householder, yet does not renounce the world, has no body, no blood, does not live, and yet it is beyond death. It is like ink on a paper that cannot be erased. It is that which is formed in the same essence of the divine. So how did the soul fall into the clutches of Maya? Here Guru Nanak Dev Ji describes the 10 stages of the moral decline of humanity from its innate bliss towards the clutches of Maya. पहले प्यार लगा थान दुध दूजे माए बाप की सुध तीजे प्या भाभी बेव चौथे प्यारो पन्नी खेड़ पंजवें खान पीण की धात छेवें काम न पुछे जात सांजवें सतवें सांझ किया घरवास आठवें क्रोध हुआ तन नास नावें थोले उभे साव दसवें धद्धा हुआ साव गैस गीत पुकारिता उड़या हंस दसाएरा. So what are the decline? We were in our mother's womb, and whilst we were connected and protected by the Shabd, we were safe from Maya. After birth, we began to develop love for our mother's milk, followed by an awareness of our parents, then the awareness of our siblings, our uncles and aunts. Over time, as the child grew, a love for playing with friends was born. In the 5th stage of this decline, a taste for food, drink, merrymaking takes hold. In the 6th stage, man became consumed by burning sexual desires, showing no respect for social customs, challenging, arguing. And then the desire to accumulate wealth. In the 8th stage of moral decline, the body gets consumed with anger. Why are my children not listening to me? Why are they not listening to me? I have so much to offer. They're not listening to me. And in the 9th stage, the hair begins to turn gray. Breathing becomes labored. And in the 10th stage, the soul of man leaves the body. The body is turned into ashes. Friends and loved ones lament. And after some time, everybody's lives carry on. The body is laid to rest and fades into the elements. The deceased became a memory and the start of a very long journey for the isolated soul begins. Guruji shares that whilst in our mother's womb, our focus was absolute in the Shabd. As we came into this material world, our live or our state of deep meditation was broken. And when that state of deep meditation was broken, then the separation from the Shabd, the divine name of our prophets, started. Our focus started to disperse away from the absolute, and in this separation, the work of Maya started. And what does Maya do first? The 5 sattvic qualities that we inherited from the divine, qualities of humility, contentment, patience, love, and faith, are slowly replaced by Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moho, Ahankara, lust, anger, greed, attachment, and ego. A condition that plagues an individual throughout their life and becomes the primary cause of their countless reincarnations. And the further we went away from the state of bliss, our focus became that much stronger in the world. As we started to identify ourselves with the sensory world of materialism, we were unable to remove the idea that we do not belong to the finite. As a consequence, surrendering ourselves to the pure consciousness, far greater than ourselves, became very difficult. And the further we began to move away from the truth, the more the mind became attached to Maya. Dictated by the conditioning of Maya, the more obstinate our behaviors came towards the teachings of the divine, consequently leading us into an endless void, into the valley of death, into the circle of life and death, into the Bhavsagar, the ocean of Maya, of despair. As a consequence, after death, the Atma, the soul, is left all on its own and is left to traverse this invisible road of death. With no direction, without any signposts, no tracks, no footsteps, no guiding voice of the divine. Born free and happy from the divine, the soul had fallen into an abyss of darkness. So how can we reconnect back to the divine? To prevent the Atma or the soul or the self, whichever terminology that you use, to prevent ourselves from dissolving into the Maya, a need of a divine, spiritual, enlightened, preordained master is important to facilitate an awakening from the Maya-induced coma. Why? Take an example of a log. A log is immersed in fire and will gradually take on the properties of that same fire that is consuming it. Similarly, the saintly souls are those souls who are consumed by the fire of Shabd meditation and have become the very same divine form of the Shabd they had merged into. In this way, they have inherited the nature of the divine, the blessings of the divine, the power of the divine. They have enjoyed the sublime mystical experience of the One. They are the ones who had slayed down Maya with the sword of the divine name. Bhagat Kabir ji writes, Nako kati, kano kati, kaat koot ke dari, kaho Kabir santan ki bairan teen lok ki pyari. I have cut off Maya from her nose, from her ears. I have cut her into bits. I have expelled her. Says Kabir, she is the darling of the three worlds, but the enemy of the saints. The three worlds being the Rajgun, Tamgun, and the Sattvic. Like a stream of water that flows from the holy Ganges will also be revered as part of the holy Ganges, so are those souls born from the divine also revered as part of the divine. They simply come to save the souls from damnation. Through their blessings, the extinguished flame of the soul will slowly begin to rekindle. We were born from silence. Sadly, the inner voice of the divine, which can only be heard in profound inner silence, has been drowned out by the chaos of Maya-induced thoughts, the battlefield of thoughts in our mind. The blessings and teachings of the divine masters will quieten your mind as you sit in their company, as you listen to their teachings, and understand one thing. Even though you may not understand, even though at that time you may not be agreeable, but let those teachings absorb into you. For in time, as your spiritual dimensions begin to rise, those words will start making sense. After 30 years, some of my spiritual master's words are now simply making sense. And he would say, Bahadur, just listen, stay and listen. And in time, son, they will make sense to you. And in their company, the mind will settle from this raging battle of the erratic thoughts, from the chaos and the ignorance of mind. Consequently, as the ignorance begins to cease, so will the perceptions of the mind begin to cease. As the perception cease, so will the fabrications of the mind cease. As the fabrication ceases, so will the stories of the mind cease. As the stories cease, so will the emotions attached to these stories cease. As the emotions cease, so will the desires, cravings related to these emotions cease. All suffering will stop. There will be no stress. Humanity will begin to live in divine will. Through the blessings of the pious souls, the dormant mind will awaken from the deep sleep of the long dark night of Maya. To awaken the dormant mind, Shabd Mantra meditation is compulsory. Whichever prophet you believe in, the name of that prophet, your given mantras are important and compulsory. Only through the power of Sangat, Seva, blessings, and meditation can this soul break free from the shackles of Maya. Once free, the eternal stream of love will once again overflow with joy. Once again, the light of the soul will begin to shine bright. The soul will be radiant, and the soul will again rise back into its origins. We have very little time, all of us. The illusion, the perception that we have is not true. We do not know when our final moments will come. So we must value our every single second. Do not waste your time, for in the end, time will waste you. Value every second. Value every thought. Do not squander this priceless wealth of time. And do not fall below the divine barriers and boundaries. The divine souls remind us the reality of the impermanent nature of our existence, the reasons and the solutions of why and how we can reconnect back into the divine. They teach us that our world will change, our friends will change, our situations will change, our relationships will change, our perceptions will change, and all that is changeable in its very nature will change. That all that we hold dear to us is no more than an illusion, a perception. We came alone, and at the end we will be alone, companionless and unknown. So however beautiful and perfect our life may feel, this life, my friends, is only a dreamer's dream. Dream high, connect with your spiritual guide. If you're a Christian, connect with Jesus. If you're a Muslim, connect with Allah. If you are a Hindu, connect with your divine scriptures, your divine prophets. For a Sikh, connect with the Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji, to the Shabd Vaheguru, to Mool Mantra. In whichever home you were born in, connect and rise and slay this Maya. Free yourself and go home unblemished and radiant. God bless you all. Thank you so much for your time. Bless you. Thank you, Flying.